This happened to me in the fall of 2022, when I had just moved into a new apartment in Eugene, Oregon. I was 25, recently out of a long-term relationship, and trying to rebuild my life with a fresh start. The apartment was a small one-bedroom unit on the first floor of a modest complex on the outskirts of the city. Quiet, affordable, mostly older tenants. Nothing fancy, but it felt like the right place to be alone and focus on myself for a while. The first few weeks were uneventful. I'd work during the day at a local screen printing shop, come home around 6, cook, maybe watch something, and then crash. I kept the blinds in my bedroom half open at night. I know that might sound careless, but the window faced a fenced-off wooded area behind the building, and I figured nobody would be walking around back there. It felt private, isolated even. I liked that. I liked feeling like nobody knew I was there. But then small things started happening. It began with my porch light flickering every few nights. At first, I thought it was just a wiring issue. The landlord sent someone to look at it, but by the time they came, it worked fine again. Then it would flicker again the next night, then go off entirely, then come back on. Around that same time, I started noticing strange marks on my bedroom window. Not scratches exactly, more like faint smudges, finger-shaped, as if someone had lightly pressed their hands against the glass. I convinced myself it was just dirt or condensation from the weather. I cleaned it, but the smudges came back. Same position, same size, night after night. One night, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. with the most intense feeling that someone was watching me. I remember lying there in the dark, covers pulled up to my chest, heart racing. My bedroom was dimly lit by the blue glow of my Wi-Fi router. The window was just a few feet away from the bed. My eyes adjusted. I didn't see anything, but I felt it. You know, that cold pressure you get in your chest when you just know someone's eyes are on you. I got up, peeked through the blinds. Nothing, just darkness and a few trees swaying. But then I noticed it. Right at the base of the window, in the dirt, footprints, fresh, deep, a single set facing inward. That was the first night I called the police. They came, shined a flashlight around the woods, took a report, and told me to keep the blinds closed at night and maybe install a camera. But there was no real evidence, no crime committed, so they left. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I bought a cheap security cam the next day, one of those motion-triggered types that syncs with your phone. I pointed it at the window inside my bedroom. Not ideal placement, but I figured if someone approached the window, I'd catch them. For 2 nights, nothing. Then the third night, the alert came at 3:11 a.m. I had been asleep but jolted awake by the notification sound. I grabbed my phone, opened the app, and rewound the footage. My heart stopped. At exactly 3:09, the camera picked up movement. A figure, a woman, appeared outside the window. She didn't come into frame quickly. She slowly emerged from the left, stepping silently out from the tree line. She was barefoot, wearing what looked like an oversized hoodie. Her hair was long, dark, and matted, and she just stood there. She didn't knock, didn't speak, didn't move. She just stared through the glass, directly at the bed. Directly at me. I called 911 while staring at the live feed, but by the time officers arrived 10 minutes later, she was gone again. No trace, not even the footprints this time. I sent the video to the police. They noted it but said it wasn't clear enough to identify her. Could be a trespasser, they said. Might be homeless, possibly mentally unstable. We'll patrol the area more. I stopped sleeping. A week went by with no more visits, and I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe it had just been a one-time thing. Maybe she was looking for shelter or food and saw the light from my window. Until the notes started appearing. The first one was on my windshield, a yellow sticky note. It said in shaky handwriting, "You look peaceful when you sleep." No signature, no context. The next night there was another, this time taped to my window. "I was cold, you looked warm." I installed more cameras, one outside facing the woods, another on the patio. and I sent screenshots to the police each time. Still nothing actionable. The last night was the worst. It was a Friday, I remember, because I had just gotten home from grabbing takeout and was exhausted. I'd been trying to stay awake longer each night, hoping I might catch her in the act, but I passed out around midnight with the TV still on. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of tapping. Not knocking, not scratching. Tapping. Soft, rhythmic, deliberate. I opened my eyes slowly, already knowing what I was going to see. She was there. Face pressed against the glass inches from my face, her hand tapping softly with one finger. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her mouth was slightly open. No emotion, no movement, just watching. I froze, couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. Then she whispered, barely audible through the glass, "You shouldn't have told." I jumped out of bed and ran to the living room, grabbed my phone, and called 911 again. But by the time I returned to the window, she was gone. Again. This time, police brought dogs, searched the woods, found nothing. The next day, I packed up and left. I didn't even wait for my lease to end. I broke it, paid the fine, and moved 3 towns over to a place on the 3rd floor of a crowded complex. I haven't seen her since. But I still check my bedroom window every night before I go to bed, just in case. And sometimes I still wake up at 3:17 a.m. without knowing why. This story happened to my cousin Rachel back in 2019, when she was finishing up her final semester at a small college in upstate New York. She lived alone in a rental house near campus, just a 10-minute walk from the main quad. It was one of those old creaky 2-story homes that looked like it had been passed down through generations of students, slightly run down, always drafty, and always full of weird noises that you chalk up to just the pipes. Rachel was introverted. She wasn't the type to go to parties or have random people over. She kept to herself, focused on her studies, and worked part-time at a bookstore downtown. Her life was simple, predictable. So when weird things started happening, she didn't even notice at first. It started with her garbage bins. She told me she'd take her trash out on Monday evenings like always, but then come out Tuesday morning and find the bins already moved to the curb, even though she hadn't put them there. At first, she thought it was the neighbor being helpful, but when she mentioned it in passing to the woman next door, the neighbor just gave her a blank look and said, "I thought you were the one doing that for me." The next thing was her porch light. It would be off when she got home, even though she swore she left it on. Then she noticed the front door mat kept being moved, angled weirdly, or flipped upside down. Again, small things, easy to dismiss. Until the window started opening. She had a narrow kitchen window above the sink that she never touched. She kept it locked tight and it was painted shut anyway. But one night, while doing dishes, she noticed a draft. She looked up and realized the window was cracked open an inch. From the inside, the lock was still engaged. That's when she started to panic. She asked the landlord if he had come by to fix anything. He hadn't. That was the first time Rachel felt unsafe in the house. A few nights later, she was studying late, around 1:30 a.m., when she heard something outside. Not just wind or leaves. This was distinct, rhythmic crunching footsteps on gravel. The house had a side path that led to the backyard, covered in tiny white stones. You couldn't walk on it without making noise. She froze, listening, then turned off her desk lamp and peeked through the blinds. There was someone standing at the corner of the house. Not walking, just standing there. A man. She couldn't see much. He was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, but he was facing the window, completely still. Not moving, not speaking. She backed away, heart pounding, and called campus security. By the time they arrived 15 minutes later, the man was gone. No footprints, no sign anyone had been there. She reported it. They told her to stay with a friend for a few days and promised to do extra patrols. Rachel stayed at her friend's apartment for 3 nights. Nothing happened. But the moment she came back to her place, it started again. This time she began receiving notes. Slipped under the door, taped to the window, stuffed in the mailbox without postage. All of them handwritten, all of them in the same strange, scribbly handwriting. You look lonely in there. I like your hair better down. You shouldn't lock the window, I miss the breeze. That last one was the worst. It sent her into full panic mode. She called the police again. They told her they'd file a report but couldn't do much without a name or face. She asked about cameras, but she was told she'd have to install them herself. Rachel's mental state deteriorated. She started sleeping with a knife under her pillow. She stopped going to work, stopped going to class. Her professors reached out to me, which is how I found out. I drove up the next day and stayed with her. She looked terrible, sunken eyes, pale skin, jumping at every creak of the house. That first night I was there, I insisted we sleep in the living room together. I thought maybe she was exaggerating. Maybe it was all anxiety or a breakdown. I didn't believe anything would happen. But I was wrong. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of tapping, soft, measured tapping on glass. I sat up slowly, looked toward the kitchen, and saw the silhouette of a man standing just outside the window. His hand was gently pressed against the glass, tapping one finger, just like Rachel had described. I scrambled to grab my phone, but by the time I got the camera open, he was gone. We called 911 again. This time, they finally took it seriously. Maybe it was because there were 2 of us, maybe because we were both visibly terrified. An officer stayed parked outside the house for the rest of the night. The next day, I helped Rachel pack her things. She from school and moved back to Albany to live with our aunt. A month later, the landlord contacted her, said a new tenant had moved in and found something disturbing. Hidden in the crawl space beneath the floorboards of the bedroom was a small bag. Inside, a hoodie, a pair of men's shoes, a kitchen knife, and dozens of photos of Rachel. All taken from outside, through the windows. Some showed her cooking, some showed her sleeping. But the last photo on the very top of the pile showed Rachel and me sleeping in the living room. Taken that night, we heard the tapping. The police never caught the guy. They said he likely used the path behind the fence to come and go. He must had keys or access at some point. They called it a stalking case but had no leads. Rachel hasn't lived alone since. She doesn't open her windows, doesn't live on the ground floor. She barely even posts online anymore. And every time she hears tapping, rain, a tree branch, anything, she stops breathing. Because for a while, she was never alone. She was always being watched. This happened to me in the summer of 2021, when I moved to a small rural town in northern Texas after accepting a teaching job at a local high school. I was fresh out of grad school, looking for a quiet place to start my career, and the school district offered me a decent salary and a rental house as part of the relocation package. It was a modest 1-story home on a long, empty stretch of road, with just 2 other houses nearby, both at least 100 yards away. Quiet, peaceful, remote, that's what I thought I wanted. The house had a front yard lined with oak trees, and the backyard stretched out into an open field. There were no fences, no neighbors peeking over the bushes, just grass, trees, and silence. My bedroom window faced the backyard, and on my first night, I fell asleep with the window cracked open, enjoying the breeze. It started about 2 weeks in. One night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard what I thought was footsteps outside the bathroom window. Slow, deliberate crunches on gravel. I froze, toothbrush in hand, and listened. Then silence. I went outside with a flashlight and checked. Nothing, no one. I chalked it up to wildlife, maybe a raccoon or armadillo. That's common out here, I told myself. But a few nights later, it happened again, this time while I was in bed. I heard it clearly, footsteps on dry grass just outside my window. When I sat up and looked, I saw nothing. But when I went out the next morning, I noticed something in the dirt just under the window, shoe prints. Not boot prints like a farmer or worker might wear. These were small, narrow, almost dainty, like a woman's shoes. It weirded me out, but I figured maybe a lost hiker had passed through. The backyard wasn't fenced after all. Then came the tapping. It was a Wednesday night just past 2 a.m. when I woke up to a soft, rhythmic tapping on the glass beside my bed. My heart shot up into my throat. I turned my head slowly, and for a moment I couldn't see anything, just my own reflection in the window, barely lit by the moonlight. Then she leaned into view. A pale face, gaunt, hollow eyes. She was crouched outside, her face pressed against the glass. Her long hair was wet, like she'd been in the rain, though it hadn't rained in days. She smiled, tapped one more time, then she ran, not walked, ran on all fours like an animal. I didn't sleep that night. I called the police in the morning, told them what I saw. They were skeptical, asked if I'd been drinking. I hadn't. They drove by, took a report, left. I didn't expect much more. The next night, nothing happened. But on Friday, when I got home from work, I found something waiting on my porch. It was a small bundle of flowers, wildflowers, tied together with a piece of twine. No note, just placed carefully against my door. I stood there staring at it for a long time. The weirdest part, some of the flowers still had dirt clinging to the roots, as if they'd just been pulled from the ground. That night, I moved a chair into the hallway and sat with my eyes on the backyard window, phone in hand. I waited for hours. And then around 3:10 a.m., I saw her again. She emerged slowly from the tree line, walking upright this time, still barefoot, still wearing what looked like a tattered dress or long shirt. Her hair hung in clumps over her face. She didn't walk toward the window, she just stood at the edge of the field, watching, for what felt like 5 full minutes. Then she raised her hand and pointed. Not at the house, not at the window. At me. Directly at me. I shut off the lights and called 911, but by the time they arrived, again, she was gone. I showed them the prints, the flowers, the camera footage. This time they believed me. One officer mentioned that there had been a similar complaint 2 towns over a year ago. A man reported a woman watching him through his windows for several nights. No one ever caught her. They offered to keep a unit nearby for a few nights. I didn't feel any safer. A week passed with no signs of her. I started to think maybe the extra patrols scared her off. Then I got the text. It came from an unknown number, no contact info, just a single message. Why did you stop opening your window? I blocked the number, reported it to the police. They said unless there were threats or repeat messages, there wasn't much they could do. That weekend, I stayed with a colleague in town, but when I returned Sunday night, I found something new waiting for me. On the wall outside my bedroom window, written in ash or soot, was a single word. Coward. That night, I didn't sleep. I packed a bag and sat in the living room, phone in one hand, knife in the other. Around 2:45 a.m., I heard something on the roof. Not an animal, it was too heavy, steady footsteps packing back and forth. Then tapping on the living room window this time. I didn't dare look. I called 911 and stayed on the line until the police arrived. They searched the roof and found more footprints, bare feet. Again. That was the final straw. The school helped me terminate the lease early, and I moved into a staff dorm on campus. Small room, shared bathrooms, but it felt safer. A few weeks later, the new tenant, a retired woman in her 60s, reported someone scratching at her window. When she opened the curtain, no one was there, but she found a dead rabbit on her doorstep the next morning. The woman left the next day. To this day, that house sits empty. The police think it's someone local, a drifter, maybe someone who lives in the woods, but no arrests have ever been made. And every now and then, I still get that dream. That I'm back in that bedroom, and someone is outside the window, smiling,